I am currently on a journey to develop my Spanish accent. My accent from Spain, España. Now, this journey is quite different from my journey with learning the Dominican accent because with that accent, I have a lot more exposure to it. I have Dominican friends and I've been to the Dominican Republic 2 times. Now, when it comes to Spain and Europe, I don't know anything about that whatsoever. I started to learn some things about Spain about 6 months ago with ITALKI lessons and then also by watching some videos on YouTube. Now, you're probably wondering, why do I need to learn anything about Spain to be able to start to have a Spanish accent? One reason for this is that the Spanish that is spoken in Spain is quite different from the Spanish that is spoken in Latin America, minus a few different countries. I think Argentina is one of them. And one big difference is using the vosotros form. And this changes actually the verb conjugation and the pronunciation of some different verbs. So instead of conjugating the verb pensar como piensas, I would say something like pensáis. And that is one big thing about the Spanish accent that I really have to get accustomed to. And I also think it's very important when it comes to actually trying to master this accent, because those types of verb conjugations, from what I've heard thus far in videos and movies and TV shows and things like that, is that they are used a lot. And this is one big reason why I'm actually really focused on vocabulary when it comes to developing this accent. Because as you can see here, just saying this word in this type of form with this type of verb conjugation is going to sound fairly different from other Spanish-speaking countries. So you'll be able to know right away that I am from Spain, or a gringo that is currently living in Spain, or has visited Spain, or has Spanish friends. You know what I mean. I'm looking on Google right now because I actually don't know if I pronounced that correctly. And this is the part where it gets very tricky for me, because I have to learn these new verb conjugations because I did not learn these verb conjugations in high school, and neither did I learn them in college. So now it's just like I have a lot more to learn. Another thing that I learned is that they actually use the words tío and tía when they are talking with their friends, and those words mean uncle and aunt. But the thing is, I don't know if they use that all over Spain or just some parts of Spain. I feel like a baby all over again. There's just so many things that I have to learn about the way that they speak there, especially because there's not just one specific accent that they use there, but there are multiple ones. How different are each of the accents in Spain, and what do they say, what don't they say, and just, yeah, what do they sound like mostly? I don't know if you've heard this before, but I remember when I was growing up, I used to hear a lot that Spaniards spoke with a lisp. Now, when I thought of what a lisp was, the only thing that came to my mind was Sid the Sloth. But now I've realized that no, it's not really like Sid the Sloth, but there are more like little rules when it comes to speaking with a Spanish accent. And one of these pronunciation rules is la th. And I guess they're not pronunciation rules, but I don't know what to call them. So for right now, we'll just go with that. So la th. So when I say la th, I'm talking about when you are supposed to change the say or the C sound for a th, for a th sound. Like with the word canción, you would say that as canción. And another rule that I learned about was you don't always change the C sound into the TH sound. So again, with this example, with the word canción, I'm not going to say canción, but I'm going to say canción. But maybe I'm completely wrong, so I don't really know yet because I'm still learning. But from what I've heard so far, that is kind of how it is. Or for another example, let's go with the word chocolate. So I'm not going to say totolate. I don't think I've heard that before. But that is just one of those rules that I am referring to. And then another one is when you would actually change the Z sound, or la sete, or la seta, for the TH sound as well. So instead of saying zapato for like shoe, you would say zapato. Another thing that I learned with the pronunciation from Spain is that sometimes at the ending of a word, they tend to heighten their voice a little bit. Or I don't know if it's heighten their voice, but they kind of elevate their voice a little bit. So for example, instead of saying a word like cebolla, just cebolla, or onion, they would say it more like cebolla, like that. It's kind of hard for me to replicate it right now, but that is something that I've heard a lot. But again, I have no idea if this is happening all over Spain or if it's just in certain locations, but it's something that I'm definitely taking note in my notebook, because that is something that I have to do or I'm going to forget all these little aspects of the accent. I try to write as many notes as possible when I am listening to something, whether that's something on a podcast or I'm watching a movie or a TV show like La Casa de Papel. Now, apart from this series that is on Netflix, I don't really know any other Spanish shows or movies that come from Spain. Now, this is the other difficult aspect of trying to develop this accent, trying to find resources that come from Spain, because I wasn't really searching for these types of resources in the past. Consuming a lot of content that comes from Spain is definitely a big part of my plan for developing this accent, because for me, I know that it takes some time to get adapted to an accent, to a new accent in the Spanish language. I've already had this experience with Mexican accent, with the Dominican accent, and with the Cuban accent. Now with the Spanish accent, there's not much different. I still have to get adapted to this accent. What I mean by this is just that I get used to this accent, so it's going to become easier for me to actually comprehend what Spanish speakers from Spain are actually saying. For me, the more that I comprehend, the more vocabulary that I'll have, and then also I'll be able to use this vocabulary, and then also it'll be easier for me to actually imitate these Spanish speakers from Spain. And I would say imitation is probably one of my favorite parts of developing this accent. I don't know what it is about it, but I just love it a lot. So whether I'm watching a TV show, I will try to imitate everything that that person or that character in that show is saying. And the same thing when I am reading a book. One thing that I love to do is read and then try to use my Spanish accent. Pero mi padre jamás se habría metido. Antes, al contrario. Rand, mi padre, me lleva 35 años, pero nunca ha sido viejo, ni siquiera ahora. Hace casi un año, quien lo hubiera conocido entonces, y Luisa lo conoció poco antes. Recuerdo que un momento de la celebración me retuvo aparte fuera del salón. Another big struggle of mine is trying to get over my language learning insecurities, because one of my insecurities is not having the perfect accent. As you can hear right there, my accent is not very strong, and of course I'm completely new to this accent, so it is very difficult for me to maintain, and also I feel like I sound very strange overall. So I just have to make sure that I don't let those insecurities come over me, because they can definitely prevent me from actually practicing, because I don't want to hear my own voice. If you're wondering where my current accent comes from, it is heavily inspired by the YouTube channel RQL, and one video in specific is called ¿Cómo es vivir en Granada, España, según un granadino? Comida, cosa de vida, fiestas y turismo. The person who the creator is interviewing, that is basically the accent that always pops in my head when I'm using my Spanish accent. And I would say the one that I'm mostly always trying to imitate, just because I've watched this video so many times. So that is where my Spanish accent comes from so far.
¿Vais solo a un bar a tapear o vais a varios?
Sí. A ver, el tema de ir a varios bares, en Granada hay un evento muy conocido que se suele hacer incluso no solamente dentro de
I definitely don't sound anything like him yet, but maybe one day. Wash, rinse, and repeat. That is exactly what I'm doing with this method here. Just consuming a lot of content from Spain, trying to learn as much as possible about the culture, new vocabulary, and the different way that they speak in different areas of Spain, and then doing a lot of imitation as much as possible, and trying not to strain my voice in the process. You know, one thing I really need help with is how do you maintain the accent for such a long time? For example, I can say some words and a few phrases with the accent that is maybe sounds a little strong, well, at least for me, it's kind of strong. But then if I try to say a lot of sentences, for example, or if I try to talk for 5 minutes or try to talk for 15 minutes with this Spanish accent, then it just becomes a lot weaker and my voice becomes more strained, and it's just very difficult to actually keep up with this accent. In comparison with my neutral accent in Spanish, I can use that all day long without having these same issues. Overall, this is an amazing experience. I am increasing my language skills and also my communication skills as well, because I know a lot of what I'm learning right now when it comes to the culture of Spain, for example, is going to allow me to connect with Spanish speakers from Spain even more so. My biggest goal is to develop this accent so much that people think that I was born and raised in Spain. If you're interested in learning more about my journey with accents in the Spanish language, tap or click on the screen to watch this next video. Nos vemos muy pronto.